Imagine waking up in the dead of a violently freezing winter night. You're miles from civilization, high up in the desolate Ural Mountains, and something outside, or maybe inside, is terrifying you so much that you'd rather freeze to death than stay in your tent. Welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're opening the case file on what is easily one of the most chilling documented events in modern history. We're going to dive deep into a forensic puzzle that, more than 60 years later, still leaves investigators, scientists, and sleuths staring at the evidence, asking one simple question: what on earth really happened at Dyatlov Pass? Let's set the scene. Minus 30 degrees Celsius. A violent, unrelenting wind is violently shaking the heavy canvas of your tent. Let's be clear, conditions like this are fundamentally unsurvivable without proper shelter and heavy thermal gear.
Exactly. It's lethal. Yet something happened in that pitch-black, freezing night that completely defied all logic, and it overrode every single standard human survival instinct.
For reasons literally nobody has ever been able to fully explain, the group inside this tent didn't just walk out the door. In what had to be a state of absolute, sheer terror, they took a knife, slashed open the side of their own tent from the inside, and scrambled out into the complete darkness.
And it gets worse. They left behind their boots. They left behind their warm clothing. In the middle of a brutal blizzard, they willingly abandoned their only protection from the deadly, biting cold.
Hours after making that desperate escape, all 9 hikers were dead in the snow. Now, you have to remember, this isn't some campfire ghost story or internet creepypasta. This is a fully documented historical event.
Right. This triggered massive state-level search and rescue operations, official investigations, and decades of really intense scientific debate. So we're going to carefully, methodically walk through the evidence of this scene to try and understand the inexplicable.
Let's rewind a bit to set the context. It's January 1959. The group embarks on this incredibly ambitious expedition deep into the remote Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. And this journey was grueling from the start. They took a train, then piled into a truck, taking it as far as the dirt roads would go. Finally, they set out on skis through increasingly harsh, unforgiving winter terrain. Their ultimate goal? To complete a highly difficult Route 3 trail, which would earn them a prestigious national hiking certification. There were 9 members who pushed forward into the wilderness, led by a 23-year-old radio engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. And we absolutely have to be crystal clear about who these people were. These were not inexperienced amateurs who made a foolish rookie mistake in the wild.
Not even close. They were highly skilled, athletic young adventurers. They had extensive winter survival experience under their belts. If you look at the photographs and journals recovered from the early parts of the trip, you just see smiling faces, extreme confidence, and real excitement. They knew exactly what they were doing out there.
But there is a crucial, almost haunting detail that happens just before the tragedy actually unfolds. One participant in the group got terribly ill early on with severe joint pain. Yeah, and because of this illness, he was forced to turn back before they reached the most dangerous, isolated section of the route. Talk about a chilling twist of fate, right? That one simple decision, driven by sheer bad luck, ultimately saved his life, making him the sole survivor of the original party. So the remaining 9 pressed forward into the deep wilderness. Almost immediately, the weather turns brutal. Massive snowstorms, severely reduced visibility, and these intense, howling winds just sweep across the mountainsides.
Eventually, fighting the elements, they lose their direction slightly and decide to establish their final camp on a treacherous, open slope near Kolit Shakal. Ominously enough, the local indigenous Manzi name for this peak translates to the Mountain of the Dead. But to these seasoned hikers, honestly, it was likely just another scheduled stop to rest for the night.
Fast forward a bit. When the group failed to send their scheduled telegram back home, rescue teams went up into the mountains. And when those searchers finally reached that isolated slope, the reality of the scene completely shattered any standard survival logic. They found the group's tent partially collapsed beneath the snow, and, just like we mentioned earlier, the heavy canvas fabric had been cut wide open from the inside. This is the exact detail that turns a tragic freezing accident into a true dark mystery. I mean, why on earth would you slice your way out of a perfectly good, warm shelter directly into a blizzard? While looking inside that partially collapsed tent only deepened the confusion, investigators found the group's essential winter clothing neatly folded and just left there. Their boots were still sitting there. The camera gear, completely untouched.
Right, so this absolutely wasn't a coordinated, packed-up evacuation. It looks like pure, unadulterated panic. And outside the tent, the search teams found desperate footprints, some barefoot, some in only a single sock, leading away from the camp, heading straight down toward a dark forest line nearly a mile away.
So here is the burning question. What could possibly terrify 9 experienced, hardened survivalists so thoroughly that they decided facing negative 30-degree temperatures barefoot was a better option than spending one more second inside that tent? You really have to put yourself in their shoes, or lack thereof. Imagine the sheer psychological dread of that exact moment. Something outside, or maybe inside with them, was so immediate and so terrifying that freezing to death seemed like the safer bet. What were they running from? Following those desperate footprints down to the edge of the tree line, searchers made their first grim discoveries. First, 2 bodies were found beneath a massive, ancient cedar tree. They were wearing only their underwear and had clearly attempted to build a meager, desperate fire to survive the night. And look at this detail. High above them, thick branches up to 15 feet high were snapped off. This indicates someone frantically climbed the tree into the freezing blizzard. Were they searching the horizon for their campsite, or desperately keeping watch for whatever chased them out? To make it even more tragic, between the tree and the tent, 3 more bodies were discovered frozen in the snow. The positioning of the bodies indicated they had realized their fatal mistake and were desperately trying to crawl back up the mountain to the shelter. But that was only 5 of them. It actually took months for the spring thaw to finally melt the snow and reveal the remaining 4 hikers hidden deep in a rocky ravine further into the woods. And honestly, the state of these final 4 bodies is what truly catapulted this incident into worldwide infamy. The autopsy reports from the ravine are what turned this from a deeply tragic accident into an enduring nightmare. We are talking about severe, catastrophic chest trauma and massive skull fractures. Forensic experts at the time literally stated the blunt force required to cause these crushing injuries was comparable to a high-speed vehicle accident. But, and this is the detail that completely defies physical logic, there were absolutely no corresponding external wounds. None. No scratches, no cuts, no soft tissue tearing that you would expect from a heavy physical blow, a fall, or a wild animal attack. How do you even begin to explain massive internal blunt force trauma? Again, impacts comparable to a car crash without a single broken bone, piercing the skin, or even a single scratch on the surface of the body. You can't. These profound forensic contradictions are exactly what shifted the investigation from a closed case into a decades-long pursuit of the truth. None of the math added up. For decades, scientists, amateur sleuths, and government officials have tried to map a cohesive theory onto this baffling evidence. But as we step back and objectively cross-examine the leading explanations, you're going to see that every single one of them has glaring, sometimes fatal, holes. Let's break them down. Okay, let's start with the most heavily debated scientific explanation, the avalanche theory. The idea here is that a sudden small slab avalanche threatened the tent, terrified the sleeping hikers, and forced a rapid, chaotic evacuation in the pitch dark. And to be fair, modern computer models actually support that a slab avalanche could occur on that specific slope. That immense weight of snow might also explain the crushed chests of the hikers found deep in the ravine, assuming they were buried.
It sounds plausible, but critics argue it falls woefully short. A slab avalanche doesn't cleanly explain why they walked away from the tent at a seemingly normal pace, which is what the footprints suggested. It also doesn't explain why they were scattered in such bizarre, distinct locations, or why a group of highly trained survivalists wouldn't simply attempt to dig out their life-saving gear once the immediate danger had passed.
Which naturally brings us to a much darker possibility that plunges us right into the geopolitical context of the time, the military testing theory. You have to remember, this is the Cold War-era Soviet Union. We know for a fact that highly classified testing programs operated throughout parts of this region.
Exactly. And adding fuel to this fire, there were actually documented reports from other hikers miles away of strange, glowing orange lights in the sky around the exact time of the incident. Could the Dyatlov group have been collateral damage in a secret weapons test?
While it's a compelling geopolitical thriller, as objective investigators doing this explainer, we have to point out there is zero declassified or physical proof of military involvement. Sure, there were trace amounts of radiation found on some of their clothing, but nothing that couldn't be explained by the camping lanterns they used. And absolutely no military debris was ever recovered from the site. Now, this next theory is absolutely fascinating and deeply terrifying on a pure psychological level. infrasound. Researchers have proposed that the unusual topography of that specific mountain, combined with the severe howling winds, created a rare low-frequency phenomenon known as a Kármán vortex street, which produces infrasound. Now, while humans can't consciously hear infrasound, our bodies physically feel it. It is theoretically capable of inducing severe, irrational panic, immense dread, and even physical illness. Did the invisible, silent force of the mountain wind itself literally drive these experienced hikers completely insane with fear, forcing them to claw their way out of the tent? It's a haunting thought. Of course, no investigation of this magnitude is ever free from fringe theories. Over the years, explanations ranging from wild animal attacks to violent criminals or even supernatural encounters have circulated widely in pop culture. But the core problem remains exactly the same. While dozens of ideas exist, they all fail to explain the totality of the physical scene. An animal attack doesn't explain the complete lack of external wounds. Roving criminals would have surely stolen the valuable cameras and food supplies. Every single theory leaves major, critical questions completely unanswered. When you synthesize the sheer volume of contradictions, the slashed tent, the missing boots, the high-speed impact injuries without broken skin, the fact that group members were scattered in completely different locations doing entirely different things, it is utterly baffling.
It's like a giant macabre puzzle where the pieces just don't fit. More than 60 years of relentless research, poring over weather records, exhuming old files, reevaluating forensic data, and utilizing modern supercomputers, it still only yields elusive, partial certainty. We are honestly no closer to a unified answer today than the search teams were back in 1959.
Today, the mountain still stands in total silence. The wind continues to sweep across the exact same slopes where Igor Dyatlov and his team spent their final terrifying night. The somber reality of the entire case is captured perfectly in a single lingering thought. 9 experienced hikers entered the mountains. Only questions returned. It's a stark, chilling reminder of the sheer power of nature and the deep, frustrating limits of our own understanding. So we have to ask, does crucial evidence still remain undiscovered, hidden beneath the Ural Mountain snow? Or was this simply a tragic one-in-a-million convergence of extreme weather, human panic, and terrible luck? Whatever you choose to believe, the Dyatlov Pass incident firmly remains one of the most chilling, well-documented, and enduring unsolved mysteries of our time. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Keep questioning the evidence, and we'll see you next time.